Got
Okay,
it.
all right. So this is Debbie Mercier. I'd like to welcome you, Debbie, and thank you for your participation in this project. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with some background and kind of demographic questions just for context. And then we will progress to the actual questions that relate to the project at hand, if that's okay with you.
Great. Great. Thanks, Dave.
Yep. If you could tell me, where were your parents born?
Well, Mom was born actually on Osborne Street in Verdun in Quebec to a Scottish mother and a Manx father. That means somebody from the Isle of Man. And Dad was born in L'Anse-à-Beaufils in the Gaspé in Quebec to a Francophone father and an Anglophone mother from Irish heritage.
Okay. And where were you born, Deb?
I was born at St. Mary's Hospital in Montreal, Quebec.
Okay.
Three of my sisters were born in Montreal as well, although one was at Catherine Booth, I believe.
Okay. And where did you receive your education, your elementary, secondary, and any post-secondary?
I think I received the first couple of years at some school in Chambéry-Laval that I don't remember because I was too little. And my long-term memory doesn't go back that far. But I did spend most of my elementary from grades 3 to 6 or 7, I guess it was, at Thorndale Elementary School in Pierrefonds. I did my secondaire 5 at John Rennie High School in Pointe Claire. I had the best English teacher in grade 9, the best teacher in 16 years of education. He was just amazing and inspiration. I did my post-secondary. I did my diplôme d'études collégiales at Cégep du Vieux-Montréal in French. And then I went and did a BA at McGill University. So a smattering of English and a smattering of French.
Okay. And what is your occupation, or was your occupation?
Well, currently I'm happily and actively retired after a 40-year career at McGill University, initially as a human resource generalist, followed by 7 years as a fundraising professional.
Okay. And where do you live now?
Well, I grew up on the West Island and I spent 35 years in NDG, and right now I'm in Verdun and I love it here. I loved it here during the pandemic. There's so many green spaces. I have great neighbors. And so I've been here for about 5 years now. And so far it's home.
Okay.
So far it's home. There might be a new home, but so far, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay, we're going to get into sort of the meat of the matter, as I like to say. This is questions concerning your experience living in Quebec today. I'll start off by asking, what is the best thing in your experience about living in Quebec?
Well, for sure, the cost of housing is much lower than in Ottawa, Toronto, or Vancouver. But the expression that really indicates the joie de vivre here in Quebec is that here we work to live, and in other places one is forced to live to work. So I like that sense of balance that we have here in this province. I built a life here in Quebec, and most of my family and many of my friendships I've developed over my lifespan, they're all here. I'm very proud to have lived through the ups and downs of nationalism in this province. And I've worked very hard to become totally comfortable in both languages. And I feel this is a huge asset in our global connected world. And I think our politicians are doing a disservice to the entire population to remove that right.
Okay. Now, sometimes this has proved to be a difficult question. It certainly is in my mind. Describe your relationship to Quebec in a single word.
I'll say it in English and then I'll say it in French. Betrayed, trahi.
Very good. Now, where do you feel most at home in Quebec? For example, in communities based on language, culture, profession, or geographic location?
Actually, it's none of the above. I feel at home in Quebec when I feel accepted as an equal, even though I'm an Anglo-speaking French. And that I don't get that sentiment very often. So, I mean, my Francophone neighbors and friends certainly make me feel chez moi, chez nous. But many Francophone Quebecers, certainly in the civil service, in retail, and certainly politicians seem to treat Anglophones as an afterthought or as a second-class citizen. And I find that very disheartening. I find it very, very sad, and that's why I guess I feel betrayed.
Okay, fair enough. Now, the next question, I often get a lot of pushback and questions about it. It's a two-part question, and the part that people seem to have trouble with, and I will try to frame it for you as best I can. And in the second part of this question, I talk about the official definition in Quebec. What I mean by official is that it's not one specific thing. It can be the government's definition, official definition of Quebec. It can be what you've experienced and evolved in, and what your peers have defined as the official definition of Quebec. It can be a multitude of things. But really what it is what is the perceived definition of official definition of Quebec. So having said all of that,
I got that.
I'll ask the complete question. How would you define a Quebecer or Quebecois? And do you think the official definition in Quebec includes you?
Well, I would certainly define it very differently from any officialdom, certainly any Quebec government, provincial government definition. My thing is one of the following three: a person or a citizen who has been born in Quebec and went to primary and secondary school here. Number two, someone who has chosen Quebec as a place to immigrate to and to settle down in. And number three, a Quebec taxpayer. That's my sense of, who belongs here, I guess, or who, can count themselves as Quebecois. Do I think that the official definition or my perception of the official definition includes me? Absolutely not. So even though my family immigrated here 5 generations ago, I still feel like an outsider, thanks to the constant reminders from politicians that my mother tongue is not French, and therefore I haven't earned the title of Quebecois. I don't think in French. I mean, Legault wants me to sit at the dining table and only speak in French with my family. It's not for him to say. It's pas son affaire. It's not his business. So although my ancestors fled to Quebec from persecution in Normandy because they were Protestant and not Catholic, the persecution and the discrimination that I feel still continues here in my native province today. I think the only difference now is the discrimination and the persecution is along linguistic lines rather than religious lines. The Roman Catholic Church sent my ancestors to English Protestant schools in the Gaspé, even though we were Francophone. And then my family began to, of course, intermarry with Scots and Irish and Dutch, and very quickly the Mercier became Anglophones. So the CIQ leader, François Legault, claims that he's the leader of all Quebecers. I think this is a political spin. It's a blatant lie. This man does not represent me as a Quebecoise in any way, shape, or form. And I feel also that the Liberal Party of Canada and Quebec have thrown Anglo-Quebecers under the bus with the passage of Bill 96. It makes doing business in Quebec in English a punishable crime. It withdraws my right to access to justice in my mother tongue. It forces me to pay much more than Francophone Quebecers for translation services in the courts and in notarial contracts. And Bill 96 is such a draconian law. It has resurrected the language wars here, and it has re-entrenched the idea of two solitudes, two separate solitudes. And our province is, I fear, going down a rabbit hole of intolerance. So I believe that protecting the French language has become a rationale for eviscerating and exterminating the English language in this province. And rather than fostering positive approaches to protecting French, this government has chosen a sledgehammer to penalize the English. And I'll just go off on a tangent here, Dave, but you know, we have this license plate that says "Je me souviens," and I think it's enough. It's enough remembering the past. The past is the past. Where are we going in the future? What do we want this province to look like? Do we want to be seen as, you know, unilingual, ethnocentric, an intolerant society? Or do we want to be a more welcoming place that's, you know, open to different languages and cultures and habits and open to the world? I don't understand this focus to the exclusion of all else. So, and to add insult to injury, Montrealers, who are the most multicultural and the most multilingual of all Quebecers, don't even have electoral equality with the rest of Quebec citizens. So Montrealers are entrenched in our provincial political scene or our democracy, entre guillemets, as second-class citizens. So.
Very good, Debbie. Thank you. I'll move on to the next question, which I suspect you've answered in a lot of your responses to other questions, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Has your sense of identity as a Quebecer changed over the years? And if so, in what ways?
Oh, for sure, my identity as an Anglo-Quebecer has never felt so threatened as it is today after the passage of Bill 96. After the passage of Bill 101, I was attending Francophone Cégep. I was willing to, you know, cross the divide, if you will. And, you know, this kind of slap in the face from Bill 96 has made me pretty emotional and pretty angry and as I said before, betrayed. So I've been verbally aggressed on the street for speaking English with my family members. I've been criticized and discriminated against by STM employees, the provincial government bureaucrats, and employees in the retail sector if I have the audacity to approach them initially in my mother tongue. And I feel I have no political voice or representation at the provincial or the federal levels of government.
Okay. Again, you may have touched on this in some of your responses to other questions.
Yeah.
What are some of the most difficult things about living in Quebec today?
Yeah, I think I did touch on them. And to be honest with you, I didn't answer. I didn't get to this one.
That's okay.
So I probably, at the risk of repeating myself, it's going to be like the same old, same old.
Right. Okay. In recent years, Quebec's Francophone majority has identified a number of linguistic and cultural threats. Which of these concerns do you, number one, share and support? And number two, which of these concerns make you feel excluded and or targeted?
Okay. Well, I must admit that I share and wholeheartedly support the desire to protect the French language. First and foremost, I think that's a very laudable goal, a very laudable intention. And I think my unequivocal support of this is evidenced by the fact that I work to become bilingual. But I feel very strongly that it is not necessary and it's counterproductive and discriminatory to eliminate or obliterate other cultures and languages in the process of protecting French. There's a line, and I think the politicians today are crossing the line. In Canada, in theory, I have as many rights to speak English as Francophones do to speak French in this province and in this country. The fact that our national federal constitutional protections are being subsumed for political gain is absolutely shocking to me. Absolutely unacceptable.
Okay, having said that, the next question is a little more broad, but just as relevant. And again, you may have touched on this. In fact, you have touched on this in your response to the other questions. But again, I will ask it anyway. What is the biggest problem facing Quebec, and how do you think it could be resolved?
I didn't prep an answer for this, but just off the top of my head, I think the fact that this province has become so exclusionary, so focused on its nationalist agenda, its nationalist objectives, is really myopic, is really very nearsighted, and does not bode well for the economic or social success of the province. And the fact that our premier has said his two sons have managed to educate themselves in English, but he doesn't want any other Quebecer to have access to the same privilege is contradictory, at the very least. Dave, I'm kind of having a throat moment. I'm just going to have a drink.
Yeah, take your time, Debbie. Remember, this can all be edited.
Yeah. No, I know.
Recording on, and that's not a problem. Take your time. I have the throat moments all the time, so I can relate.
I'm just going to get a Kleenex. Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the next question, I've got to admit to you, as you'll see in the documentary, I stole directly from Guy Rogers. He used this very effectively, as you will see in the documentary that he produced. Indicate by a show of fingers on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being weak, 10 being strong, how strongly do you feel that the joys of living in Quebec outweigh the challenges?
Well, right away, I'm not going to listen to your instructions because I'm going to do a 0 or a -10.
You're not the first. You're not the first to do that.
I'm not going to show 1, 2, 3, 4, or 10. I'm going to do 0 or -10. I have to admit, Dave, I'm at the point of leaving the province that has been home to my family for 5 generations. It's enough. J'ai mon voyage. It's like, if I'm not wanted here, I'll go somewhere else. Tant pis pour eux. No, c'est terminé mon affaire, là.
Wait.
Ouais, c'est terminé.
Okay, is there anything else that you would like to say about your sense of identity or belonging in Quebec? Say anything you'd like.
Yeah. I mean, until this point, with Bill 96 and the constitutional issues arising from the lack of protection of our rights, until this point, I've always been very proud to be a bilingual Canadian, a bilingual Quebecer. And I just feel like it's not enough anymore. We'll never be accepted as citizens. So I'm going to stop trying. I'm going to stop, doing the little rat race in the cage. I'm done.
Okay, Debbie, thank you very, very much for your insight, your cooperation, truly appreciated. All very great responses to questions. I'm going to stop the recording now.